welcome to Hellish. I'm Daniel Whelan and I am Hell's receptionist. The Dark Lord himself has asked me to process damned souls as they arrive, holding them here in the waiting room while our Inhuman Resources Department finds them a hellishly pointless task to perform for the rest of their afterlives. While they are here, I take the opportunity to extract from them their infernal playlists, the 5 songs that will soundtrack their eternal torment. I am joined in this endeavour by Satan's T-Boy, the man who spends his mornings mucking out the 4 stables of the apocalypse, Mr. Alex Gale. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Daniel.
Hey, so how are the horses of the apocalypse? Are they primed and ready?
They're good, although it's a lot of training to get them on and off of horse boxes at the moment. You know, horse transport's very difficult. But because of the apocalypse popping up in all the different parts of the world, we've got to be ready to get them wherever. And then when you get them on a 737, that's
I feel like war particularly might be quite frisky at the moment.
Yes, very busy.
Yeah, well, let's hope that you can keep them under control. So it's nearly time for us to start tormenting a new damned soul. Who are you bringing to the waiting room this week?
Well, this is Robin Ince. Robin is a British comedian, writer and broadcaster. He's known for blending humour with science and philosophy. He's also authored several books, including The Importance of Being Interested and I'm a Joke and So Are You, and is widely recognised for co-hosting the popular BBC Radio 4 show The Infinite Monkey Cage alongside dreamy physicist Brian Cox.
Robin Ince, welcome to hell.
I'm already hearing in my head, we are the 4 horsemen of the rock apocalypse, which I hope you know as being comic strip band Bad News.
Bad News,
It was the first band I ever saw at the Hammersmith Apollo.
Really?
Yeah, burning, looting, raping and shooting. We are the warriors of Genghis Khan.
Wow. That is quite a first gig to have been to,
yeah,
I would say. So I have to ask you this because we ask all of our guests this when they first arrive in the waiting room, and that is, you find yourself in hell. What have you done to deserve this?
I think it will probably be my agnosticism, my enjoyment of the films of Derek Jarman. I think hell will actually be hell will be more like going to the Scala cinema. You see, I think that is a Taxi Zum Klo will be playing and there'll be a John Waters triple bill. So I consider it to be a far better place. You know, the carpets are a bit sticky. The beer is quite warm, sometimes as warm as liquid lead. But overall, much better to be here than that place up top.
Well, to be honest, the kind of thing we do in hell is we would set it up like what you've just described. You would think you're going to see like a Derek Jarman retrospective or something, and you'll sit down and it will be all the Transformers movies back to back. That's the kind of trick we're going to play on you while you're down here.
Oh, okay. I've never seen them, so I'm sure it'll be a joy.
Okay.
For the first time.
Yeah. No, not after 2 or 3. So, Robin, you started as a comedian in the 90s, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, early 90s, probably about 91, 92.
Okay. So the 90s was, especially in comedy, I would say, was quite a laddish time.
Not quite. When I began, it was just before I think it turned into that. I think it was, because Loaded was what? Was that 94 that came out? Something like that. And I think that's when that kind of... It's very interesting to look back at a lot of the stuff that was coming out then and indeed the early part of the 21st century and find that it's aged far more badly than, you know, the Young Ones or the comic strip or any of those things.
Yeah, the stuff that came just before. How because what you do is quite... I'd say there's kind of empathy, like the name of your book as well, is a kind of in the importance of being interested. There's kind of like a curiosity about the stuff that you do. When you first started out, and you know you've got the end of that kind of 80s era into the 90s where it gets much more laddie. How do you find your niche there? Because I think a show like The Infinite Monkey Cage probably wouldn't have been on in the 90s.
No, I think I found my niche in about 2004. So I just had a long time of trekking through 12 years. And then I think a mixture of things like meeting my friend Josie Long, starting a show called The Book Club, where we celebrated the Killer Crabs books of Guyan Smith. Of course, the Killer Crabs always invading the Barmouth coast. Crabs on the Rampage, Night of the Crabs, Crabs Moon, Origin of Crabs, you know them all. And so I think, for 12 years, I was probably trying to turn myself into roughly the shape and form I thought I maybe was meant to be. And then I found the way that in fact, now, fortunately for 20 years, I've really enjoyed what I've been doing. But when I first began, I was so in love with stand up, and then I forgot why I loved it. And then that has become reignited since my mid-30s.
So, when you're doing it in the first place, then when you're first starting, is it that you have always secretly wanted to do the kind of killer crabs, stroke science stuff, and that was just like repressed? In which case, how did you keep going for all that time?
Well, the thing is that I loved comedy, and I drank very heavily. And it becomes a kind of lifestyle. It becomes a 20-something lifestyle. You do a couple of gigs, you go out drinking, blah, 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 and then, so I think it was finding out who, the child that I was is the human that I've become. But there was a middle area where I think it's almost like, I've talked quite a lot about neurodivergence in the past. And it's that bit that when you find your gang, and then slowly your gang and everyone else in it realizes what the instructions of their mind is, and then you find yourself comfortably doing what you want to do. One of the dangers of any form of entertainment is that you tie yourself into trying to guess what the audience wants, as opposed to creating what you want to create and finding your audience. And I think that's really, for the last 20 years, that's what I've done, is increasingly found, sometimes there's people in the audience who are 93, and sometimes in that same audience there's someone who's 9 years old. And that to me is an absolute joy.
I find it interesting that you've been able to find this niche. It's quite inspiring in a way. The very first time I saw you live was in, I think, 2019, just before the pandemic. You did a gig in Llandudno. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
With Mrs. Barbara Nice. And you ended with a poem, which I thought was quite a brave thing to do at a comedy gig. And since then, I've noticed that we're getting more and more poetry from you. Like, it seems like every day you write a little poem and put it on Instagram. And I wondered, how do you come to that? How do you come to poetry instead of comedy?
Do you know what? It is just, I'm always excited by trying to create new things. I'm very easily bored, and then I'd have these couple of poems that I'd written that ended up, we used when I was doing a big arena tour with Brian Cox, and which I felt I felt rather kind of, in some ways I felt bad for the other poets, or I'd say poets really, I should say, rather than other poets, because I thought I've only written about 4 poems and I've had the chance to perform them in front of audiences of up to 14,000 people. And then in May, I'd started writing a few more, and then I just made this year, my mind suddenly went, I love poems. And every single day I would, and I just absolutely, I normally write 2 or 3 or 4 a day, just sitting on the train or wherever I see something, I think, oh, how can I turn that into? And I think, again, actually, ADHD wise, a poem is a really good thing, because you come up with an idea and within 5 minutes you can have created the rhythm, form and shape. Whereas, of course, as we know with Edgy, if it requires writing the whole screenplay, by the time you got to scene 5, you go, boring now.
But do you have to be brave to do this? Because I think about poetry and writing poetry. I'm not very confident about the idea of showing it to people. Does that ever come into your head?
I mean, the thing is that I spent 52 years of my life with a really, really loud voice of anxiety, and a very, very loud voice that was saying, ultimately, you're an imposter and also you're shit. And then, thanks to a mixture of diagnoses and a small amount of sertraline, I don't have any of those things now. So it gives me, creatively, I just go, I want to just, like when I was doing my show last year in Edinburgh, which started with me punching a melon repeatedly with Vernon Kay's face on before I burst into Mustang Sally and then went to blackout, which is a reasonably bold move, I think, to go to blackout within the first 4 minutes of your show. I would always have this tremendous energy, this very slight little bit of worry of going, will this work tonight? And then, and in the old days, I think I would have heard a voice all the way through my performance going, they don't like it. That man over there is really cross. That man, he's not enjoying it at all. It's not what you were meant to do. He came expecting something else. And I don't have that voice now. So, I mean, it was beautiful. On the last night that I did my melon show, I actually heard a woman in the third row as I was punching what turned out to be the first of the melons of the evening. It normally was a solo melon show, but this one actually ended up being a double melon show. And I just heard this woman going, are you sure we've come to the right show? And I love that because, people are coming to, some of the people who come and see me are like going, oh, we hear him on Radio 4 doing science. And the one thing that I would say to everyone listening to this, where you think you have to be specific to a certain kind of thing, is more often than not, like when I was playing the Towsey Festival a few weeks ago, the last summer festival that I did, and the whole set was a poetry set. I got a couple of kids on stage who made paper aeroplanes out of the poems when I finished them. And the beautiful reaction I got from a lot of people who'd never seen me live before was they went, oh, I didn't know that's what it was going to be. And in fact, it was better than what they thought it was going to be. They thought they were going to enjoy someone going, another thing that I find very interesting about quantum mechanics is, and here's my wry take on the behavior of subatomic particles. And then they had this kind of, and that's the thing I would say to everyone, which is, it's so hard to have confidence, and it's so hard not to hear the deafening critical voices. But I now, if someone doesn't like what I do, fair enough, that's fine. Okay, you're not the. I saw a great put down by a comedian, Eric Rushton, very funny comedian. Don't know if you go, and he's got this kind of, he's in an anorak and he's quite laid back, and he's getting heckled by someone, and he goes, "These are some of the best crafted jokes in the United Kingdom. So if you choose not to enjoy them," and I thought, oh, what an amazing put down. You have chosen not to enjoy my jokes, and that's your choice. So I kind of do. I always want people to have a good time. I do not. I want everyone to leave anything that I make feeling happier to be alive than when they came in. I don't really want to pick on people. I don't want people to, I try as much as possible not to attack, kind of cultural groups or whatever I want. And I've felt very free about that in the last 3 years, which is why it's interesting, because I think when you first got in contact with me, and I said this might be quite difficult for me because I quite rarely, I really avoid doing negative things. So you will realise that any song I mention, I must really, really hate.
What type of melon was it?
The best ones are Galia melons. The trouble with the watermelon is someone brought a watermelon to a show I was doing in Walthamstow recently, and I said, I presume you brought it. Even though I wasn't doing my melons-based show, I said, okay, fair enough. I've made this tropical rod for my own back, and I said, watermelons don't last. And literally one good punch, and a watermelon's gone. It's out.
And they're expensive as well.
Yeah, and then the Galia, this is great. I now have on my tax return, some of the tax deductible elements are about 70 melons. And but there's another, but then someone in the interval went out and got a Galia melon that would not break. Ooh. And I punched, and then it became beautiful, because it's like that kind of thing where there's a point where you think he's got to stop now. Surely he's going to stop. And then they go, he's not going to stop. And I went until it was like, it was just pulp inside, but the skin wouldn't break. And when it finally broke, that was. So I'm actually at the Slapstick Festival in Bristol next February. I'm going to join up with the material scientist Mark Miodovnik, and for a show called Smashing Melons, which I will punch various different melons, and he, as a material scientist, will explain the reasons that particular melon broke at the point that it did.
That's something to look forward to.
That sounds really good.
That is Reekian values to me.
That does sound really good. So we are going to ask you about your music choices in just a second. Before we do that, I've got a couple of other questions to ask you. The first of which is your own history with music. So I found a jazz album that you have a spoken word part on, The Soundless Dark, with Will Bartlett and Norma Winston. I was wondering, first of all, how did that come about?
Will was he was the house band for a Christmas show that I did, and he asked me if I'd and I do love things like that. I love the spoken word. In fact, I'm working on a spoken word album with my friend Steve Pretty from the Hackney Colliery Band at the moment, because I love different ways that you can play around with words and add music. And also, I had in the past, when I used to do the book club show where I'd read out from the Giant Killer Crabs books and Mills and Boon and stuff, there would very often we'd have live accompaniment. And if not live accompaniment, very often I'd kind of, have something like Philip Glass, a very, very powerful piece by Philip Glass, while I read out a story about Sid Little from the comedy Double Act Little and Large, going to a curry house and bumping into Cliff Richard. So I've always found that way of kind of messing with things exciting.
And then the other question I wanted to ask you about music was, have you been in a band yourself. Were you ever tempted to
Yes.
be a musician? You were?
I was
Okay.
in the Reg Gutteridge experience, we were called, named after the boxing commentator, the Reg Gutteridge, and it was normally shortened to the Reg. And I was briefly in them. I think on Wikipedia it used to say that we departed due to musical differences, but actually we didn't. It was just because I went off and did stand up, and actually they were very good as a three-piece, and I just got in the way. But we used to do a song about extremely factually inaccurate song about Dennis Nielsen called The Hornsey Axe Murderer, because, of course, though he lived in Hornsey, he wasn't an axe murderer.
No. How did he kill people, Dan? We had a Dennis Nielsen expert on the other week, didn't we?
We did, yeah. Luke Neal, who wrote Dares, the TV
Oh,
drama with
yeah.
David
He's
Tennant.
down in hell with you.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. That is brilliantly written. I thought that was a fantastic piece of work.
Oh yeah, and he was a fantastic guest as well. He was so interesting, and he had this amazing story that he was kind of trying to get this thing made, and then out of the blue, David Tennant emailed him. Someone had mentioned to David Tennant that he was doing this thing, and so David Tennant got hold of the script and emailed him and said, "I want to do this," which is quite an incredible thing to have happen. So, Robin, you find yourself here with us while the Human Resources Department decides on a work placement for you. And this will be the task that your Infernal playlist will be soundtracking. So to help them decide where they send you, can you tell us what the worst job you've ever done is?
Do you know what? I think I've been quite lucky because, you know, I could say it was being booed on at the Belfast Empire. That's certainly. Do you know what? I did once do a show. I wrote on a show called The Problem with Anne Robinson. And it was quite an unsuccessful show. But even that, I found some enjoyment out of it because all the writers were like, "Oh my God, this is disastrous." I mean, it had an amazing thing that happened in it. They couldn't get any guests, right? Just no one wanted to do it. And at one point, our guest booker shouted across the office, "That's a no from Bruno Brooks." And so that probably, but overall, I think I've been, I mean, in some ways, I suppose, the most hellish job I've had was being support for Ricky Gervais, you know, and you know, every single day finding a new way that he was going to torment me. So, you know, there is certainly something of him being a satanic imp in his behaviour.
Right. That is interesting. Now, we were going to ask you about this later, but we might as well come on to it now. And that is that obviously recently you have kind of been in the news for talking about this time in your life when Ricky Gervais, as you put it in the interview, that he kind of bullied you.
Yeah.
I've heard you kind of refute the kind of furore that has arisen from it. Maybe you do have things you want to say about that, and I'll let you do that as well. But the thing I'm interested in is, what is it like when that happens to you, when all of a sudden you are news? Because that can't have happened to you very many times, I assume.
Well, what I did was I ignored all of it.
Okay.
I didn't read anything. I didn't look at anything. Whenever I got a request from the press in any way, I just passed it on to a friend and had this one particular reply, which was, "I've said everything that I was going to say on the podcast that I did 6 months before, and I have, you know, no animosity towards Ricky Gervais." So I didn't want to, you know, I don't want his life to be plagued by a horrible news story. You know, we don't talk anymore or anything like that. But I really don't hold any animosity to him. And I also knew that whatever the story was, it wouldn't be in the way that I spoke about it on the podcast, which was reasonably lightly, though at the same time I was saying I do look back. In fact, I mean, so many people who've seen the short film Living with Ricky, you know, they go, "Oh my God, you were bullied there." So It was kind of, it's what I would call banter bullying, you know, and one of the main reasons we ended up talking about it was I think you're far more open to being a victim of that when you, again, whether it's neurodivergence, anxiety, or whatever it might be, if you do think you're a bit shit, then you allow people to treat you. And of course, we know this from so many people in far worse situations than going around touring with Ricky. You know, there's people who. So that was really why it came up. And I thought, well, the best thing to do is it's not part of my life. It's a bit like if I get someone like the writer of Father Ted will sometimes, organise pylons by anti-trans people against me. I just ignore it. And I think that's the best way to do it, because they might all be screaming at me and shouting at me in an ill-informed manner, and I'm sat in the park having an ice cream. And
Do you just switch it off then, like because I mean, it's easier said than done, isn't it? Ignoring stuff.
yeah, it takes a lot of practice, and I've had quite a few kind of pylons from various things. I mean, in particular, I think anyone who said anything that was kind of supportive towards the trans community, I think you knew there would then from that point onwards you'll be my friend Josie and my friend Grace Petrie and many others, have had, and the thing that I suppose your victory is that you hang around with much nicer people. You know what I mean? It's like, I think about that. Who would I like to spend the weekend with? Andrew Tate or Greta Thunberg? And it's definitely the latter, because apart from anything else, like so many, it's whenever I hear people going about, the woke, you can't say anything anymore, you can't do any jokes. And what I always find fascinating is I've found most of the people that I know who are technically woke to be far more entertaining and with far funnier jokes than anything I've heard from Andrew Tate or Donald Trump. To have that reply by Greta Thunberg when Andrew Tate went, I've got 33 cars and I'm going to show you the one. She went, oh, yes, please do enlighten me. Email me at smalldickenergy@getalife.com. And to see his anger and to yet again feel that, the erectile dysfunction he would be cursed with was now palpable again. And I think, well, these are that's who I want to hang around with. Greta Thunberg, Grace Petrie.
Fair enough. I saw a Lamborghini on the way to the office 2 days ago. Orange Lamborghini, number plate, the King.
Oh,
I thought, if you're driving an orange Lamborghini already, that's making up for something. And then to have I don't know what else you lack to need to put a personalised number plate that says the King on it, unless it was the King. In which case, it's very good misdirection. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Like, Alex does live in Sweden, where they do have a king. So
they do have a king here, and the Norwegians have a king. We're quite close to Norway as well. Could have been him. They got more money there as well.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Margaret Thatcher said, only losers take the bus, and I still take the bus because I will do anything to refute Margaret Thatcher.
Fair enough. I just really hate driving, so
never learned. No idea how to do it.
Okay, yeah.
It's for the everyone out there. To be honest, I've got a very short attention span. I would be a hazard on the road. So it's much better for me to be in the number 63 or stuck on a trains for Wales somewhere.
And that you probably will if it's Transport for Wales. We're quite good at being rubbish at trains. So, Robin, I'm going to ask you now for your Infernal playlist. So we're going to start with a track that you used to like that you are now embarrassed by. Oh, so what's that?
This is I'll Go Blind Before I Stop by Meat Loaf.
Okay. I like that you put the space in there.
I'm not hugely embarrassed by it, but it is what it sums up is there was a period of time where I was so obsessed with everything in comedy that because Meat Loaf had appeared on Friday Night Live, which was at that point presented by Ben Elton with Fry and Laurie on it, Josie Lawrence and all that kind of stuff. Because of that, I then went to Watford Woolworths and bought the 12-inch of Blind Before I Stop.
Okay, let's have a little hear of Blind Before I Stop. Let's have a listen. Okay, Alex, can you give us a few facts about Blind Before I Stop?
I can.
Please?
It's track 5 on Meat Loaf's 5th studio album, the eponymously titled Blind Before I Stop. It was the album's 3rd single, released in 1987. It reached the heady heights of number 89 on the UK singles chart, and unusually, Loaf actually co-wrote this song, and he even played rhythm guitar on the recording.
Oh. Okay, those are facts I did not know. I didn't know that he had 5 albums.
Well, he had to force this one out. Okay. He was contractually obliged.
Yeah. You make it sound like he was constipated.
I don't want to cut past judgment on Meat Loaf's
when you're eating that amount of meat, that kind of thing happens. I mean,
exactly.
I have to admit, I can't help but feel that that's had one of the kind of an influential part on Jordan Peterson's thinking. Now that he only eats steak,
right. And he probably will go blind before he stops as well. So you bought this single. At what point do you decide? Actually, no. This is kind of embarrassing. I wish I hadn't bought this, or do you just roll with it?
Do you know, I just roll with it. I mean, what happened is I don't have it. Oh, no, I do have it. That's annoying because what happened was, you might know, I used to live in a basement flat and it flooded with sewage and it destroyed 1,000 vinyl LPs. And annoyingly, all the best ones, it turns out, were D to G and R to Z.
So they were.
They were all destroyed, and Meatloaf and Morrissey remain.
Maybe that's a lesson for you.
It is. It is. Don't. I mean, the main one is don't buy a basement flat. It'll get flooded with shit, and you'll lose everything you love.
That's true.
Fair enough.
Is this song about masturbating?
I presume so. And you know, if you look at the world, that still, if we want to talk about the best masturbation song, I will go with She Bop by Cyndi Lauper. Huge fan of Cyndi Lauper.
I don't know that one.
And She Bop from the She's So Unusual album is absolutely, yeah. I mean, that whole album's absolutely magnificent. I'm a huge. And then obviously you've got Divinyls, I Touch Myself. You've got the Vapors, Turning Japanese. I think it's Turning Japanese. And I would probably put, Blind Before I Stop is probably fifth or sixth in that kind of. Oh, then you've got Orgasm Addict, of course, which would probably be number 2, wouldn't it? After She Bop by Cyndi Lauper. I mean, this is got, again, the Rethian values that we're managing to draw out of this by, the mix of priapism and onanism that has suddenly come into this world.
I'm going to hope that Meatloaf isn't talking about masturbation, because he does say that he's going to do it in the mall.
Yeah, do it in a plane, do it at the sports arena. He does it everywhere.
In the high school hall.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think it is. I mean,
do you know? Because he says rock. He's rocking in all these places.
Yeah,
it's either having sex or masturbating, I think,
or rocking.
Or rock.
He may well be rocking, but I don't know why he's going to go blind from that. But equally, I suppose from because I've now done so many science shows with Brian Cox, I get to meet a lot of biologists, and apparently the link to optic nerve damage and masturbation is at the very least weak.
Also, some link though.
You've always got to have a level of doubt. Remember, that's how science works.
I can think of how that might happen. Okay, so Trek 2, Robin, is a song that is universally adored that you cannot stand.
Oh, do you know what? Right, here we go. It's Imagine by John Lennon.
Okay, let's have a quick listen.
Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do.
Okay, Alex, let's hear it about Imagine, please.
Well, it was released October of 1971. Also features on an album of the same name, like the previous song. It's the best-selling single of John Lennon's solo career, produced by Phil Spector, John Lennon, and Yoko Ono, who in 2017 received a co-writing credit. How popular is this song? It reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart when it was released. Since then, it's earned a Grammy Hall of Fame award. It's been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's list of songs that shaped rock and roll. And in 2004, Rolling Stone, which this is a list we come back to quite often, Dan, we've never had one this high, ranked it number 3 in its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time.
Good, I've chosen a good one then.
Oh, it's the winner, I think. We've had some come close, but this is the winner.
This is one of the most popular.
I actually do quite like Yoko Ono solo music. So first of all, I'm going to go out on a limb there. I went to the Yoko Ono exhibition that was in London recently 3 times, and I find it very interesting. The reason I chose it, and I will give you is some background, is, I don't hate all John Lennon's work. I find one of the reasons is that there's the famous thing where him and Yoko were in a bed for peace. I don't know if you remember that. They're in a hotel. Yes. I think it was in Amsterdam. I might be wrong. And it's protest the bed. And someone said the best bit of footage is when they get out of the bed for the maid to change the linen. Now, that to me kind of says quite a lot in terms of the difference between, hey, everyone, why don't we just all live at peace and we're just all one? But as long as at least one person isn't all at one, because they'll be needing to change my sheets. Yes. And also because the older I get, the more I love George Harrison, and I think Paul McCartney is a genuine. And then I wanted to have a nice story, which is George Michael, who I met very briefly once, and I have to admit I was hugely impressed by. He had no starriness about him. I was a writer backstage on something. He didn't really know where to go, so he just hung around in the room that we were in, and he was very, just hey guys, is it all right? Everything going all right? And just very friendly. And he bought the white piano, I believe, that Imagine was written on. He then would place it would be moved around and placed in places where that might have a positive effect on people, hospitals, old people's homes, things like that. And so I snuck in your hellish podcast something filthily positive, but which is exactly what you'd expect from my vision of hell. But and that was another. But Imagine just it annoys me, and I think there are. And it feels to me a very pale lyric. And whereas I do like Happy Christmas, War is Over.
Imagine is one of those songs that is just there all the time. And so you don't really spend time thinking about it critically. Most people don't spend time thinking about it critically. When I was listening back to it to prepare for this, one of the things that struck me is that straight away how bad that piano sounds. Like it's kind of not quite in tune, and it's recorded quite badly. It is, and it's just a really weak song. I have a theory that perhaps if he hadn't have died, it wouldn't be number 3 on that list, because
may well be right. Yeah.
It was number 1 after he died as his like signature tune, and obviously he a victim of gun violence, very violent death. You can
Which
understand
then is another irony, because of course the person who produced it then shot and killed someone.
Oh, of course, yeah. And is he still alive? He's in prison.
He
died in prison. Yeah,
he died recently.
The thing about this song is it just makes me want to say, but it's more complicated than that, John.
Yeah.
It's like one of those Instagram things you see, sort of about solving the Middle East. And you go, yes, if only it were that easy, we'd have done it.
But I think also that might be another reason that I chose it as well, because it is the fact that people would often sometimes stand-ups would go, John Lennon, amazing, he wrote Imagine, and what did Paul McCartney write? The Frog Chorus. And I'd go, yeah, he wrote it for a children's cartoon.
Yeah,
it's not like so. No, he did the right, and I used to get rid of that bit about, oh God, Lennon's so deep, McCartney's, and then also once you know the stories of, McCartney was so fascinated in art, so fascinated in moving things forward, so fascinated, and so I think in another way I've kind of chosen it because I read a great book actually the other day called McCartney in the 90s. I sound like I'm a huge Beatles fan. I'm not, by the way. I mean, not that I'm not a fan, but there's a book all about McCartney in the 90s that I really enjoyed reading, and I thought, this is. So that's why I chose it. I chose it because, like I said, it's very difficult but this would really get you in the end, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would. You would feel your teeth just like going rotten in your mouth.
And also, it does have the line "No hell below us," so that would mock you, wouldn't it? Just again and again, you're in hell.
There wouldn't be technically, would there, Dan?
There wouldn't be any hell below you.
There would be no hell below you.
Well, it depends on which level of hell, doesn't it? Which circle of hell you're in. Whether there's
we're doing a Dante's.
We've added a few extra floors at the bottom. There's like HR is like the 10th level, and there's advertising department. They're all down there as well. I would go a step further than saying that he wrote the frog chorus for a children's film. In that's better than Imagine. The frog song is well better than Imagine. It's like if you want a song about like unity and kind of like, like we're all going to get together. Yeah. Give me the frog song every time. We all stand together. Yeah. Much better. And it's like beautifully orchestrated. It's just, I will defend that song till my dying breath. It's well better than Imagine.
Have either of you ever heard the Langley School's music project?
Yes. Well, I've not heard them do Imagine or We All Stand Together.
They did Band on the Run.
Oh wow!
It
Okay.
is fantastic. If anyone listening, if you've not Langley School's music project, beautiful idea. The wheat belts of Canada. A music teacher decided to get the kids into music by recording an album in the gym, hanging microphones just off the kind of rails and stuff like that. And they do Desperado, amazing version of Space Oddity.
That's the one I've heard.
Absolute
Yeah.
joy. God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. Wonderful. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I've been overly positive again.
No. It's fine.
It'll come back later to
Yeah.
haunt you, don't worry.
Yeah, just remember that all this nice stuff you can remember, you are never going to hear again
Oh,
after
yeah,
today.
true.
We are going to wipe your memory, and you will only have the 5 songs that you have chosen in your head.
Do the audience at home know that both you look like Cenobites or not?
we purposefully don't put photographs out to avoid them
Like
thinking.
Daft
We don't want them
Punk.
to know.
Yeah.
We're very minor Cenobites. We're like, it's more like Staplehead and stuff like that rather than, the full
Just a couple of
pinhead.
pins.
Yeah, it's just like with drawing pit tack head. So in a moment we are going to ask Robin Ince for the artist he will meet in hell. If listeners you would like to hear who that is, then you need to head over to patreon.com/hellishpod to become a subscriber. For a small fee, you'll get longer, uninterrupted episodes earlier than everyone else, and the gratitude of the Dark Lord himself. If you don't want to join the Patreon, just know that Satan is judging you, and you'll also have to listen to adverts now. I hope you're happy. Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt the episode. Well, I'm not sorry, really. I just wanted to let you know about a few ways you can keep us on the road to hell. The first is nice and cheap. Like, subscribe, follow, award us 5 stars, write a review, tell all your friends and enemies. We're at HellishPod on social media, apart from Instagram, where we are hellish_pod. The more visible the podcast is, the more episodes we'll be able to make. The second is if you want to tip us, you can go to coffee.com/hellishpod to throw us a few coins, either just because you're nice or because you want to try bribing your way out of hell. That's coffee.com/hellishpod, ko-fi.com/hellishpod. We workshop that name ourselves in hell just to make it very awkward for all podcasters who are asking for tips. The last one is to subscribe to our Patreon. You'll get longer, ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our 2 pilots. Plus, there's a bunch of other bonus stuff for higher tiers, including the chance to make a cameo appearance on a future episode. That's at patreon.com/hellishpod. Now, back to Hellish. Welcome back to Hellish. We have the comedian and broadcaster Robin Ince on our musical rack, and you rejoin us as we start to tighten the ropes by asking him for a track that reminds him of a hard time in his life.
Well, this is I don't know. You are probably quite aware. This is a band called the Vaselines, and brilliant Scottish band. Big influence on Nirvana as well. And the Vaselines, they say it's called "Son of a Gun,"
Okay.
and it's just this. I was doing a show in Edinburgh called the award-winning Robin Ince, star of The Office, Series 1, Episode 5, First Bit. And it was at the same time that my flat had flooded with sewage. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a radio show that I didn't really like doing, and I'd just be sitting there breaking pencils under the desk throughout. And I was also doing an Edinburgh Fringe show that was not well received or understood. But at the end of every show, this bit of music came on. This is what I chose to walk, and it was just enough to keep me going. Oh, I love this song so much. And I couldn't even talk when I was during that Edinburgh Fringe. I could talk on stage, but I couldn't socialise. If someone said, "Do you just want to go to a pub?" and I suddenly sit there and just go, "Oh, I can't talk," and I just go off on my own. So I kind of had, listening to "Son of a Gun," and that was also, I think, from Arab Strap. I bought, was it Into the Woods, Malcolm Middleton's album, which is a wonderful album, which has again a perfect line for the Edinburgh Fringe. Woke up again today, realised I hate myself. My face is a disease. and you go, "Yep, that's a good one to have. That's a good one to have." But yeah, Son of a Gun, Vaselines were absolutely wonderful band, and they recently got one of my favourite days at a music festival some years ago at the Latitude Music Festival. The Sunday was Magazine, followed by the Vaselines, followed by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Wow, that's a bit of a lineup. I'm gonna play a little bit of it so the listeners can hear it. So, Alex, what have you got about Son of a Gun by the Vaselines?
Well, most of it Robin just said. They're from Glasgow. Started as a duo in '86, but they expanded in '87 to get a bass player and a drummer. And as Robin mentioned, they weren't particularly well known until Kurt Cobain declared that they were his favourite band ever, and he covered a bunch of their songs, which most people will know. Jesus Doesn't Want Me for a Sunbeam, which was on the MTV Unplugged in New York album. But Son of a Gun, Nirvana also covered on John Peel's radio show in 1990, and it featured on their compilation.
So isn't that a beautiful thing to do? Which is Kurt Cobain, I think, will have clearly, because also he covers 3 songs by the Meat Puppets on the Unplugged, and it's that bit to go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that the people who've made the music that has made me are going to make some money out of me. Because, you know, that Unplugged album will have sold an enormous amount. And I think also the Vaselines did a fantastic cover of Divine, if you remember Divine from the John Waters movies, Pink Flamingos, Hairspray. You think you're a man, but you're only a boy. You think you're a man. The Vaselines covered that as well.
Oh, wow. So my only question I have left about this song then, Robin, is does it bring you back to that time when you listen to it? Or like, do you still feel a bit of misery?
No, it brings me back to remembering this, how powerful the music is, and what a great thing it is that at a point which was beginning to certainly, I think, dig my way into a pit of despair, this was something that gave me something of a rope out of it.
Well, that's fine, because we are going to play it at you so many times that hopefully that will change your mind. So let's move on to track 4, which is a track you hate by an artist you love. So what's this?
This is Meat is Murder by the Smiths.
Okay, let's have a little listen.
A death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And the flesh you so fancifully fried is not succulent, tasty or kind. It's death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder.
Okay, Alex, what have you got about this?
Well, aside from actually killing Robin, this song is the title track of the Smiths' second studio album. The album Meat is Murder is claimed to be more strident and political than its predecessors, including the pro-vegetarian title track. Morrissey, whom the website vegan.com describe as perhaps the most outspoken vegan of all time, went as far as to forbid the rest of the band from being photographed eating meat. The Smiths produced the track themselves, assisted by their engineer Stephen Street, who he remembers after putting down the click track and some piano, Morrissey handing him a BBC sound effects album and saying, "I want you to create the sound of an abattoir."
Yeah, and it's not the message, by the way. I'd like to make that clear. I'm a vegetarian and I totally get the message. It just feels like it's the track, with perhaps the exceptions of their Cilla Black cover, Work as a Four-Letter Word, that I'm most likely to... And I checked with my son, who's 16 and only got into the Smiths quite recently, and he kind of agreed. It's like, it just... I mean, it's still... In one way, it's still some very beautiful music, because to pick any song... You know, there's lots of bands that I love, and very rarely is there a song that I don't hate this. I mean, I almost wanted to pick Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others, because it's a beautiful piece of music. And it's one of the reasons that I think the Smiths split up, because Johnny Marr had written this fantastic, very, very beautiful piece of music. And then, you know, Morrissey comes up with, from the Ice Age to the Dole Age, there is but one concern I've just discovered. Some girls are bigger than others. And it's like that thing of Johnny going, Sorry, I thought this was going to be like Well, I Wonder. And Well, I Wonder, which is also from Meat is Murder, is, I think, one of my favourite Smiths tracks. I just find it has a level of preaching that is a little bit too much for my liking.
Yeah.
I think because I'm a vegetarian as well, so I agree largely with the sentiment. But the problem I have with this is that it's not going to convert anybody.
It doesn't make a case for it, because I'm not
No.
a vegetarian, but I would like to eat less meat. But him telling me, like, enjoying a Sunday roast, it's not just bad, it's murder, is a bit strong, I feel.
It is. It's hard. I kind of feel like if this charming man was called Meat is Murder, and had you could probably sneak it in a lot more, that kind of people might be going, oh yeah, you know what, it is kind of like the lyrics are quite unpleasant about like the turkey that you slice, and you do think about a knife going
the
into a
Festives
creature
turkey,
and all
you
that kind of
slice
stuff.
the meat in your mouth as you savour the flavour of murder.
I do have another problem with the lyric, and that is he says, it's death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And I would say of like all the deaths, murder's normally the one that has a reason, right? There's normally a reason that people murder each other, right? It's of all the deaths you could have, an accident has no reason.
So you'd like it to be a death for no reason, and death for no reason is measles, something like that.
It's only a preventable disease.
Yeah, entirely,
exactly.
yeah.
So the two things we learned is it should be punctured Highland bull on a hillside, and then that'll be fine. Yeah, good,
Yep.
good.
Perfect. I think people would like that more. That if they could dance to it, they would be.
I
They would be into it.
I will be writing that album.
Right. I also think that if everyone in the world suddenly turned vegan, I reckon Morrissey would be into the
Andrew
hamburgers
Tate.
again.
No,
I think
Jonathan Peterson. Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. I just think he would be like, well, now that everyone is doing the vegan thing, I'm gonna like bring on the McDonald's. I think he's just such a contrarian that he wouldn't be able to help himself.
There are certain people, and this is a very broad statement, and it's not true of pretty much all the vegans and vegetarians I know, but there are some people who manage to combine being tremendously cruel to human beings with then going, oh, but I love rabbits so much. And you go, you're a great fan of things which cannot really hold an opinion or talk to you or indeed disagree with you.
Yeah, that cannot
I
challenge
think Morrissey
you.
would probably become a cannibal.
Yeah, you know what? That is perfect.
It's also, I mean, it's an argument. It's a silly argument that, you know, what do those incels make? Yeah. But you know, there's murder of animals, eat other animals, and so on. But one of my chickens, it puts in mind, you know, I keep chickens down here in Helldown. One of them was killed the other week. We don't know what by, but I was walking around in the garden and I found it being eaten by a buzzard behind a bush.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's quite exciting. So I got to see a buzzard up close, but then I got to see the mess.
I thought you were going to say, and I thought initially it had been eaten by Morrissey, but it turns out it was actually the bass player from the Mighty Lemon Drops. Which feels like that was actually the bass player of the Mighty Lemon Drops.
The thing I'd say with that to that argument though is that the idea that, well, you know, nature kills each other and eats each other is that nature doesn't industrialize it.
No,
nature hasn't made it.
No, very much so.
Hasn't built an abattoir. Okay, so Robin, we are almost at the end of your musical ordeal now, and so shortly the real suffering will begin. Before you go off to eternal misery, we'd like to give you the opportunity to visit our earwormery. The little blighters are hungry and need you to provide them with a track which, once stuck in your head, you can never get out.
It is a song which I think I'm probably going to say. His name's Michael something, and it just goes, Yamo be there.
Okay.
And the reason I get that stuck in my head is because I get certain phrases will sometimes play around my head like for just hours. And it might even be kind of connected to stimming. I don't really know. But I always have this thing where I'll suddenly just make a cup of coffee and a variety act come up and go, hi, I'm Mike Yarmo. I'm Tony B there. And we are Yarmo B there. And it just goes on and on and on. So Tony Yarmo and Mike B there are one of my excessive,
Okay, well let's have a listen to the the double act of Tony Yarmo and Mike B. There may be who it's by.
It's by James Ingram and Michael McDonald. It's written by Ingram and McDonald, produced by Quincy Jones, no less, along with Rod Temperton, who's an English songwriter who wrote Thriller and Off the Wall. Came out in 1983, got to number 44 in the UK, although later on it was remixed and re-released, got to number 12, won a Grammy, actually. In the summer of 2022, Soul Music Arbiter's Smooth Radio ranked this as Michael McDonald's 5th greatest song ever.
Oh, I knew it was going to be smooth.
But
I would say that would be that was Paul Hardcastle there, but it's time to rock out a little bit with Yarmo Be There.
Pick up the pace.
It's Michael McDonald has he has a catchy voice.
Yeah,
It's like it doesn't really matter what he sings. His voice just kind of sticks in your head, and it's such a great voice. It's like breathy and airy, and it kind of makes you want to sing along regardless of what he's singing.
It seems to be about God as well, this song, I think.
Yes, I think
my favourite bit about it is they use the word doggone shame, which I think is you don't hear that enough. It's a doggone shame.
well, I should say it's not like I haven't chosen it because I hate it. I've only chosen it because Yarmo Be There is just always there. The Yarmo is always being there.
That's good. Well, we ask you for the earworm last because we quite like infecting the audience with an earworm before we go out. So you've done excellent work here, because there are going to be people now who spend this week going, Yarmo Be There.
It becomes more earwormy now we have Robin's Variety Act introduction in our head, I think.
Yeah.
I think that even adds to the earwormness.
Yeah. There used to be a soul singer, quite a smooth soul singer, called Al B. Shaw. I don't know if you've ever come across Al B. Shaw. He sang Black Tie White Noise with Bowie. So maybe Al Be There and Al B. Shaw will be teaming up with Mike Be There. And,
So is that it from me then now?
That is the end of your infernal playlist.
So we've somehow skipped my 2 most infernal songs, which is brilliant.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, then we've got to hear what these are. So what are the 2 most infernal
songs, which I think were the initial questions were Top Loader, their
Right.
own song, right?
Yep.
I cannot, it's just that one of every song that I've mentioned. You know what? I've actually perhaps, pulled the wool over your eyes. I could survive in hell with those. But Top Loader, that song, which is
Dancing in the Moonlight.
Dancing in the Moonlight, because, oh, get me out of this wedding. And then the other is Paul Young's cover of Love Will Tear Us Apart. Because Paul Young's Love Will Tear Us Apart is, I think, one of my favourite songs of all time by Joy Division, and one of my favourite songs of all time. I love it. I think it is, when I was 11 or 10 when it came out, it was immediately like, oh my God, this is amazing. And turning it into, I suppose, really something again that's quite smooth. And I know something that's been tearing me apart. It's love. Anyway, so, and also because it's kind of, so Paul Young doing that. So I've just, now we're in hell. Now we're sliding down the rings.
Well, we're happy to add those to your infernal playlist. No problem at all. All the misery that we can cause, the better. Have you heard Liza Minnelli's version of Dancing in the Moonlight?
No. But I like Liza.
It is so good. It's like you can't believe that Top Loader heard that and then went, oh, yeah, let's do that, but shit.
Oh, you see, her that Pet Shop Boys album she did was fantastic.
Yes,
with Losing My Mind, great album.
Yeah. I've got a lot of time for Liza Minnelli. But
she's very funny as well.
She is in Arrested Development, of course. I will.
Brilliant! One of my favourites.
I will play a little clip of Liza Minnelli's Dancing in the Moonlight now, just for the listeners, so they can experience some of it.
Every night, and when the moon gets big and bright, it's a supernatural delight. Everybody's dancing in the moonlight.
Tracy from HR has spoken, so while I fetch your work placement, Robin, I'm going to leave you with Alex, who will recap your Infernal playlist.
Okay, well, a track that Robin is embarrassed that he used to like, Blind Before I Stop by Meatloaf. A track universally adored, Robin Cannot Stand, Imagine by John Lennon. A track that brings back bad memories, Son of a Gun by the Vaselines. A track that Robin hates by an artist he loves is Meat is Murder by the Smiths. And a track once stuck in Robin's head he can never get out is Yamo Be There by James Ingram and Michael McDonald. Now, normally here, I ask which of those five is the most hellish and which you would hate to hear the most, but we've already had that. It's Top Loader and Paul Young with Love Will Tear Us Apart Again, unless I'm much mistaken.
Top Loader definitely easily slide into the number one slot and never, ever leave.
Okay, well, in that case, we will do that for you. So I've just come back from Tracy. She says that you are going to be working on a new TV show, which is called, you're going to be the writer. It's called The Problem with Ricky Gervais. And you'll be touring it around the country. So hopefully that's going to be okay with you.
Yes!
So now your Infernal playlist has been encoded onto your cochlea and will henceforth play incessantly direct into your brain. Before you descend into the depths of hell, is there anything you want to tell the listeners about? Anything coming up that we can look out for?
My mouth is filled with wasps. No, it's well, not. I mean, there's going to be a new series of The Infinite Monkey Cage, and with Pam Ayres talking about hedgehogs. And next year, my next book comes out. Normally Weird, Weirdly Normal. So that's so as usual. I'm just kind of going around doing lots of gigs, turning up at any old library and bookshop that will have me, as well as some theatres. And then the thing I'm excited by is, I'm going to be bringing out an album of the poetry, and I do poetry. There's a new poem every single day at Instagram. So it's just Robin Ince 1969. And I love doing them, and it's always great to get feedback from people. So that's the main thing I'd say is, if you fancy, and I deliberately write to be understood. I'm not opaque. I'm not clever enough to be opaque.
I think that's what scares me about writing poetry, is the thought that people will see that I am just a fraud because I'm not clever enough to be opaque either.
It's not about clever. It's if it comes from your heart, and it doesn't. I've been and done talks in prisons and had prisoners reading out their poetry, and they're people who just suddenly, some of them could barely read when they first went to prison, and they've been given the power to go, what do I want to do with these words and how do I want to express myself, is a beautiful and wonderful thing. And it's sentiments like this that make me very surprised that I'm being sent to hell. But like I said, those Derek Jarman movies.
Yeah, I'm afraid, like the second you turned one on, you were damned forever.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Do you know what? If I'd never seen Divine eat dog shit in Pink Flamingos, maybe I'd at least just be in limbo.
Yeah, you'd be on Desert Island Discs now, but sorry. So, Robin Ince, thank you very much. Now it is time for you to go to hell. Hellish was written and presented by me, Daniel Whelan, and the shoveler of satanic shit, Alex Gale. You can support the show on patreon.com/hellishpod. Find us on social media at hellishpod, apart from Instagram where it's hellish_pod. You can listen to all of Robin's choices and our ongoing Ultimate Infernal playlist, bringing everyone's choices together on Hellish Pod on Spotify. Until next time, damn you all to